Welcome to the Eagle Valley Model Railroad. In this video we're going to go through the process of building the benchwork and laying the track on the new 2-foot by 10-foot switching layout. As far as the benchwork's concerned, we're going to build it in two pieces for easy removal whenever we get ready to tear it down. So all we're using here is 1x4s because we're not going to have a lot of weight on top of the layout with the scenery and the track and the trains. I'm just using a single support in the very middle of our tabletops. 1/4-inch plywood, nothing structurally huge about it. The next part we're building is the shelf underneath. We're building it just slightly smaller than our top, and because we're going to have paints and tools and spare this and that, we're actually going to use 2 supports just to sturdy this thing up some. Get our top screwed down, flip it over. Do your best to get these as square as you can as far as your legs. Get a helping hand here to put our shelf underneath. We measured the bottom enough so we could slide Tupperware tubs underneath it. Everything's put together with screws for ease of disassembly if need be, and that's basically what we look like. We put our foam board down, again splitting it in the middle and gluing the foam board down. Put some weights on it, and I use a foam friendly adhesive here so it doesn't eat into our foam board. Put some weights on the top of it, and I let it dry for 24 hours just to make sure everything sets before we start messing around with the top. Here you see we've put our paneling basically from the big box stores. We got some paneling, stripped it down to the width that we want. Put it in place. Got some neat little washers and screws. Put some skirting underneath it. Basically went and got some fabric, cut it to length, and stapled it in place. It just really cleans up the layout. So this is what our track plan is going to look like. Again, it's 2-foot by 10-foot. We're going to have 7 different industries spurs on this thing. We are going to have some scenery aspects, but this is what we're going to go for as far as our new track plan. So placing track, of course our track plan's got grids, so I went ahead and drew those grid lines onto the surface of my benchwork. And I didn't get real crazy on getting it exact. I eyeballed this part of it. My thought process here is to pick a piece of track that you have no control over what the geometry is of the track. So the crossing, I can't change the geometry of the crossing. I can't change the geometry of the switches. The only thing I can manipulate is the tracks that connect these pieces. So I put my switches in the general location that I want those, and you can see as I've got some pieces of track just laid down, and I'm sliding my crossing back and forth up the natural alignment of the track. I've got the right hand lead coming into the crossing curved, and just trying to get that smooth transition between those rigid pieces that you can't manipulate. I'm using Peco Code 100 Flex Track. My switches are the Peco switches. That's what I started off with once I got back into the hobby, and I have 0 complaints, and I've had 0 issues using this track. So I get it pretty close to where I want it, and I use a Sharpie to mark my flex track. Get your old trusty Dremel tool out, and you just zip right through the track where you want it. I cut it a little long, that way I can clean up the edges. This is a little bit of a tedious process. Some guys will go specifically and get real detailed with their plans and not deviate from their plans at all. I kind of go with the flow with it a little bit. I did want to keep any switches from crossing my 5-foot mark, which is the halfway point of my table. That way I wouldn't have any switches to deal with when we got ready to move this in the future. One of the key parts there you just saw was me. I've got one of my cars on the track, and I test every section. You can't test enough. You get these curves in place and you get pieces of track together, and you just want to make sure that everything's smooth. These T-pins that I'm using, I'm putting them in at a pretty good angle just so the flanges of my wheels on my cars won't hit those T-pins, so I can test that track. This piece right here, you want to make sure, you see how I was bending it to get it in place. You want to make sure you don't have to do that. You don't want them cut. You don't want to cut your pieces where they fit snug. You want just a little bit of play in there. This is in a finished downstairs controlled environment. It's not going to get too hot. It's not going to get too cold. But you don't want to take the risk of the track and the metal and your table expanding and contracting due to humidity and heat or the cold. So leave little gaps, not huge gaps of course, but leave little gaps between your sections of track. It's not going to hurt anything, and actually it adds that little clickety clack sound, if you will, which I mean it gives it a little bit of a realistic sound. Wasn't going to bore you guys with the slow motion, or I say slow motion, the regular speed of putting track work down, but I did want you guys to watch some of my processes. Here you can see we're using a straight edge to get those nice straight lines. Prototypical railroads, rails may not be and track may not be perfectly straight. It flows with the contour of the land, and it doesn't look out of place. With model railroading, for me, again this is just for me, model railroading, when you look down the track and it's a little wobbly and it doesn't look right. I do understand the real thing isn't perfectly straight, but aesthetics in the modeling world, it can be a distraction for me personally. If you would rather have your cars come down through there and do that shimmy shake, it does look really good. I will have to say it does look pretty cool in the videos, but just sitting there aesthetic wise, for me it's a little off-putting. So I try to make sure that if my runs are parallel to each other, that the track is absolutely as straight as I can get it. It just looks cleaner to me. Again, we're picking these pieces that we're trying not to run flex track up to the point of the turnouts and the different components that I can't manipulate the geometry of those. So we get to a place to where we need to add a piece of flex to get to the next switch. We actually eyeball where we want the next switch. and get it in place, and then run the flex track from a stationary point to another stationary point. Because again, we can change the flex track's length. We can do those little curves to it. We can mess around with the radius of it. We can play around with exactly what we're going to do with it, more than we can our switches. And here again, just another example of trying to get that, making sure the switch, making sure the lead coming into the switch is straight, and then the leg coming out of the back of the switch is straight. And continue to test every section you add. Throw your car on there. That's one of the old Lifelike cars, one of the first cars I ever got. Came in the box kit when I was a younger fella, and we have upgraded the wheels to it and that kind of thing, but I mean, just one of the cheaper cars. If it gets beat up a little bit, I'm not really concerned about it. Adding the industry spur here to the what will be the scrap yard, and just pinned up to the curve, and just curve that old flex track around. I can't even tell you what radius curve that is. Pulling the outside rail back, because it takes more rail to go around the outside curve than the inside. Making sure my rail is even at the turnout, and once you get it about where you want it, just pin it down, get it good and secure, and again, just continue to test it. Make sure those cars are going to run through there. This is part of the plan that goes up to the what we're calling the north side of the layout. We're dealing with the east-west configuration here. It's what we're going to say anyway. Our trains run east and west. We have a main line coming right through the center of this area, and it's, of course, travels east and west. These are the two legs at the very top of our layout plan here. And again, just continuing the process. This is a three-way switch. I had a lot of comments about the three-way switch and how it's not typically used, and it is what it is for me. It's a switch that I had on hand from the last layout. It's something different other than just the regular switches that we have, and I want to use it, so I'm going to use it. So this is the finished product as far as track layment. I don't have any cork roadbed down. I will have cork roadbed down. I don't have the bridge in place. It will be in place. This is just to run this track plan, to do switching on this track plan to figure out if this is exactly what we want or not, and we can make changes along the way. And those changes will be easy, simply pulling out push pins, changing track configuration, putting pins back. Questions, comments, concerns, throw us a comment down. Thanks for watching as always. Remember, like, share, subscribe. If you want up-to-dates on this, on our channel when videos hit that little bell button. Thanks for watching, guys. And until next time, happy modeling.